So my story starts with about a year ago today, and I wanted to update my practice, and I wanted to be more efficient, more profitable, basically, and so I could buy more automobiles. No, so I don't have to work as much, and I can focus more on teaching. And so we hired Leandra, who is a very high-level business consultant. She ripped apart my practice. We physically moved the office. We hired all new staff. We tore apart every system. We re-engaged with new software, new computers, new everything. And the end result of that, what I'm now living right now, which is that I'm more relaxed. My email has been cut back by 80% because my team is doing it instead. I'm making 50, 60, $70,000 more money. We're delivering better patient services. We have happier patients. We're better at screening out the not so great patients that I don't really want to work with in the first place. We're getting everything has improved. And so I want to start to share with you all what I have benefited from by working with Leandra. And so we've brought her in to teach some special classes. And we also have her now as sort of a resident teacher within the Kalish Method training program. So if you're so fortunate as to sign up for our training program next year, you're going to be in the year of Leandra, as we're calling it now, where you're going to have access to a practice management consultant that usually would be completely unaffordable for most of us to be able to pay for. The type of skills she has and the level of service she's delivering for our students, it's probably you would only get in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. And most of us don't have $50,000 or $100,000 to drop to bring in a team of consultants to figure out our practice, right? So anyways, we're trying to give you little bits and pieces of this through the free webinars as well. And if you become interested in building your practice, we have her for all of next year as part of our team on the teaching staff. So I'm very excited about it. She'll be teaching live classes and just involved with our doctors every day in our community. And as I watch the doctors, like we just got a message, not like about 3 or 4 minutes before the webinar started, from one of our students, Duncan. He made $50,000 more this year, in his practice just by implementing the basic ideas that Leandra taught him and that I taught him. So we're talking about people who want to make more money so that they can have more time. And I know exactly what Duncan's going to do with this. He's not going to buy a fancy car. He's going to spend more time with his kid because he's got a kid in kindergarten. He doesn't want to work as hard as he has. So what we're able to do for you all is train you in such a way that you can free up your time because you're making more money so you can spend more time with your families and on your personal life, on your meditation, whatever you need to do. Okay? So that's kind of what this next year is about and what tonight is about, is shifting the emphasis for some of our free webinars. So we're talking about these things that are really, really essential. And I applaud all of you that signed up for today because it's a little bit outside the box of what we usually do. But I'm going to turn it over to Leandra now and let her get started with her special blend of magic here. Okay, so thanks.
Thanks so much, Dan, and good evening to everyone. Tonight, we're so excited to start bringing you some of these topics around practice management. And this is absolutely one of my favorite topics, which is team building. So Dan, if you want to move to the next slide, we'll talk about the agenda tonight. There's a couple of core things that I would like to share with you and make sure that you're thinking about when you are managing your practice in your team today, or you're thinking about adding people into your team moving forward. And one of the first important things we'll talk about is leadership and what the difference is between leadership and management and how you as a business owner have to wear both of those hats. So how we can set you up for success of defining those different types of responsibilities that you're going to have. And then we're going to look at employee happiness. This is such a great one to look at what fundamentally people want out of their work environment, which might be a little bit surprising. It's not just money, and we'll talk about how to really look at employee recognition and awareness and some things that you can do for that. And really talk about critical communication skills. So feedback and recognition. I think we'll have Dan tell us some stories as we're talking through this on how he's interacted with his staff before and his experience and things that he's doing to also further this communication as he continues to build his business. We'll talk about the 5 most common mistakes in hiring and training and retaining your staff that I think Dan can relate to as some of you can as well. And then also, finally, also wanting to look at, when and who to hire. So how to make sure you're building your practice in a way that is really scalable for you and affordable. So Dan, next slide. The first thing that we're going to start talking about is looking at leadership. There's 2 aspects, and we're going to right now look at what's happening on the left-hand side. And really your role in leadership, you have decided to be an entrepreneur, whether you know it or not, and have the desire to create a practice. And so you're in the mindset of really being that visionary, strategic thinker. You're providing your vision and you're setting your purpose. You're developing your mission of who you want to help heal and how that looks. And you're trying to inspire and motivate and set yourself up for success on your long-term goals and objectives. So that leadership entrepreneur hat is really an important one. And as you're working with your team, you'll often need to put yourself in that perspective of giving that insight and being able to motivate and inspire and lead while having a clear vision of where you want to go, and then noting that there's going to be some management things that you're going to need to do along the way, which we'll close out with at the end of the presentation. But really focused, on the mentality of leadership, and having you step into that role and own it is really important, because you're setting the culture, you're setting the tone and the expectation for leadership within your organization. Even if you have a larger organization that have managers underneath you, ultimately you're at the head of the ship leading that. And so people are really going to be looking to you for leadership, and it's an important thing that you recognize and realize in yourself from your strengths and your skill set, that it's okay to step out and be the leader. And I think sometimes that can be uncomfortable. Dan, have you had an example of when being the leader has been a little bit uncomfortable for you, or recognizing that that was your role?
Well, this is my main problem, is that, and, I love the leadership role, but I love to do visionary things, like to the point where it's almost out of control because I come up with too many ideas and it's not really realistic. And then I have zero sensitivity or skill set on the management side. So like every time in the last 25 years when I've set up regular weekly office meetings, we've had like 3, maybe 4, and then it stops, completely falls apart. Every time I've tried to set up quarterly reviews of employees, I do it once or twice and then I stop. So I can do the visionary thing, but I have zero skill set on the management side, and that has hampered my ability to conduct my business pretty significantly, because we end up with a great leader and no management, and that doesn't really lead to a successful team.
It's a challenge that I think a lot of practitioners have, because it's really two sets of your brain that have to interact together. And so we'll give you some tips that I think you'll be able to relate to, as well as the rest of the people on the call, on harnessing that management. So let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about the aspects of management. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, because these are some great facts, and this is what I want you to think about as we're looking at management and talking about people and your staff. Did you know that only 14% of organizations provide managers with the necessary tools for rewards and recognition? 14%. I mean, what a small percentage when you look at how important really understanding how to reward and recognize employees are, because really you are nothing without your employees, and they are the basis of what's going to help you grow your business. And so having that connection with them is so critical. But it's, as Dan said, it's been a challenge for him. As you can see, it's a challenge for most organizations that only 14% really knowing how to do this well. The second fact that's interesting is that more than 80% of employees say they're motivated to work harder when their boss shows appreciation for their work. I mean, what a great stat to really understand that what makes people tick clearly is getting that feedback, and then looking to see, okay, when have you been in great positions that you've maybe worked for other people and you had that feedback, and what did that feel like, and when did you not? And 80% of those employees to say that they're not getting it is really an interesting stat. And then the final one is, while 51% of the managers believe that they do a good job recognizing that well done, activity by their staff, only 17% of those employees in that same group believe their managers do a good job. So there's even a bigger disconnect. Half the people are saying, yeah, I absolutely recognize my people. And those people are saying, about 20% of those people saying, we only agree with that. So Dan, if you go to the next slide, it's interesting because this is kind of the final question that's really going to help us tee up the next discussion in getting in detail of what is the #1 factor in job satisfaction. Do you think it's the amount of pay, or whether or not the individual feels appreciated and valued for what they do? This is such a great quote I love from Stephen Covey, is next to physical survival, the greatest need of a human being is psychological survival, to be understood, affirmed, validated, and appreciated. And so the number one factor, as you can imagine, even though people want to get paid well, even though they want to be recognized financially and they're hoping to make good money, as we all are, really it comes down to that second thing of feeling value and appreciated. So Dan, if you go to the next slide, this is what I love in breaking down some of those core attributes that Stephen Covey talked about, as we're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How do we actually put that in place when you look at recognition in the workplace? So as you're very familiar with survival, safety, love, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization as it comes to the human experience, let's overlay that into the work experience. And as we know, survival and safety is really all about compensation and benefits. And that love and belonging and esteem is about recognition. And self-actualization then is really going into career development and opportunities. And so having that perspective in terms of what your employee is looking for is really important, because the number one reason that people leave, honestly, usually comes down to a lack of recognition at work. And they'll tell you there might be other reasons, and sometimes there obviously is. When you've had a long-term employee that is really connected and they're moving because of their family's got another job, or something like that. There's some reasons why people truly do leave, because they have to. But there's also, even if they tell you there's a reason, they're not truly satisfied where they are, and a lot of it comes from that recognition perspective. So Dan, if you go to the next slide. This talks about what happens when you don't have it. And so having a lack of connectedness with others, being on a mission, if they don't feel connected to the mission and the organization, they might start to feel discouraged. And there's always more to do than there is, and no one appreciates necessarily what's being done. So employees might begin to complain about their work. They might begin to complain about colleagues or supervisors. They will start looking out for other opportunities, and good employees will start to really, like I said, look for other places to go, because they will not feel like they're really understood. Dan, have you had this happen to you?
Yeah, I've had a lot of employees over the years when you really all add it all up. And I think the main way I've kind of undermined them, if I look back on it now that I understand these principles, is that, here you are, you're this doctor, you have all these patients coming at you, and they're all sick, and they're all messed up, and they're not usually happy people to begin with. And the amount of lack of recognition that we get as doctors is pretty astounding. Like, you'll have a patient who's had lifelong depression, you fix it, they've been depressed for 35 years, and they don't send you thank you notes and come kiss your feet and love you, They just expect, oh, okay, well, I was depressed, I saw this depression doctor, and now I'm not depressed. They kind of expect us to deliver these results. So I think as a practitioner, I'm not continually being showered with all kinds of thanks by people, even though I do pretty amazing and miraculous things on a regular basis. And so when I look at my staff, I'm like, oh man, like, am I going to go out of my way to, say that was an amazing letter that you typed, or wow, great email, I mean, I'm not. And so, because I'm expecting them to do what I do, which is just suck it up and work their asses off day and night to help build my practice without a whole lot of recognition coming from me, because I'm not getting recognition from the patients, and there's this whole kind of negative cycle. And I think what ends up happening then is people kind of fall into this state of not feeling appreciated, and then they, don't do a very good job. I mean, if you're lucky, they probably quit. If you're unlucky, they stay with you for a while, just not doing a very good job, which is even more of a problem probably than if they leave. So I've really learned recently how to do this whole thing I hate, the whole feedback and recognition thing and acknowledging people. And, I just kind of force myself to do it. And it really does work. People are, they're not mind readers, and they don't understand that how much we appreciate them sometimes unless we tell them. So that's a pretty important thing.
Yeah, so it's a skill, and it's just acknowledging and being aware of what your employees need, and that your goal is to create a great environment so your employees are happy and productive. So in the end, you have a profitable and a successful and a great culture and a great business. So what I've learned in my management career is that it all feeds on each other, and I think my big epiphanies really came when I started not just managing people, but I started realizing that I couldn't do it all on my own. I was one of those type A type of people and independent and figure I can do it all. And if it can't be done, I'll jump in to get it done. And I started my career as I was growing my organization and realized, wow, I really physically can't do it all by myself, even if I wanted to. And so I was really depending on relying upon other people that I realized didn't nearly have the fear of failure that I did. And so I had to figure out how to get them motivated and get them excited to do their job so we could all win together. So if you go to the next slide, Dan, what I've found, and I didn't realize that there was a book about this until about a year or two ago, but I kind of quickly figured it out, 15 years ago on my own, that, there is a unique appreciation language, and that when we talked about the stat as if recognition and appreciation are given and it doesn't work, that's because people tend to communicate in the ways that are most meaningful to them, not necessarily in the way that's most meaningful to the person receiving it. So what are some of those key areas that we're going to talk about? Words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts. Dan has some great stories, and we'll ask him to share a little bit when he's been connected with what's important to him and what's important to someone else, and then how when that connects, it's really powerful, and how that misses its mark, it doesn't. And this is based off this book recently that I read was 5 Languages of Appreciation at Work by Gary Chapman. So it's a wonderful book. It's off of his initial work, 5 Love Languages, if you've heard of that. It's just a really great way to realize that everyone's unique and different, and they want to receive that feedback and recognition in the way that's most connected to them. So Dan, let's start to look at a couple of these areas. If you want to move the slide forward. Words of affirmation is the first one that I think is really important to understand in your employees. And one of the things that I do when I have new employees come on is I actually spend a little bit of time getting to know them. And some of the things I ask them is like, how do you like to receive praise? And you can really learn about somebody. Some people really like using words to communicate. So getting that praise verbally on an accomplishment or achievement, or just getting that affirmation of character. So what are their positive traits? They're hardworking. Recognizing some of the attributes that they have, it really makes them feel good. Because honestly, as humans, we're all looking to be seen. We're all looking to be understood, and we all want to feel that connection of oneness. And so knowing that preference really allows me to implement it in the right way. So if you have an employee that words of affirmation is important to them, you can implement that by doing one-on-ones and giving them feedback directly on their accomplishments or their activities. You can give them praise in front of others. So if there's a team meeting, or a lot of times when I come into the office and want to highlight someone's achievements, I'll just say, hey, we just got a recognition from a customer, and here's what they said about so-and-so's performance. And so it gives opportunity for them to get high fives from their peers and coworkers. A lot of times people really like written affirmation. So I try and, on top of emails, say great job, nice work, thanks for all the effort here. You can tell people that are important on this, because when I ask some people in the past how they like to receive praise, sometimes I get a common one that's like, someone says, oh, I have a folder of all the nice things that people have said in terms of customer service recognition. And so you really know that they're connected into written affirmation. And so making sure that you're doing things that you're recognizing to them one-on-one. But again, that public affirmation is, copying them on a group email to everyone so everyone else can chip in with those high fives. Dan, do you have an example of words of affirmation and how you've used that in the past and when it's worked or not worked for you?
Yeah, and I know that my staff is listening to this. This is even funnier than anything else could be, because what I really hate, and this is because I get so many emails every day, and I could get a couple hundred emails in a day between all the doctors that we're training, all the patients that I have and stuff. And so apparently I don't like words of affirmation. I've learned this about myself recently, because one of the things that annoys me more than anything else is when people send emails back that just say something emotional that's not constructive to the business conversation, like thank you, or appreciate you did that for me, because to me that's like another email I gotta open, and then I gotta delete it, and it's just time suck. So apparently, but now I realize, oh my gosh, after getting exposed to this work, it's like, wow, everyone's not like that. Some people actually like to get emails that say thank you, or much appreciate that. And in fact, if they do something that's really great for me, my staff does, and I don't send them a thank you email, maybe they will think that that's a little rude because they, benefit emotionally from words of affirmation. Whereas, I grew up in a family where that just didn't happen a lot. It just wasn't how we related, and it didn't really take on a large meaning to me. So I think that the big point for me really is that we all have these sort of defaults that we operate under, and then we assume that other people are the same. And in fact, we each have our unique ways that we need to get the support. And figuring this out is like a mission critical thing, so you can communicate what your intentions are rather than like I have in the past, not communicating my intentions accurately because I love and appreciate my staff. But again, how are they going to know that if I'm not telling them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where it's again that goes back to that personal preference. We tend to give and receive in the way that we like, but recognizing that as a manager, as an employee, as a business owner, that you really need to adapt because you want to connect with your employees in the way that they feel is really most meaningful. So the second thing that we'll look at is quality time. This is a attribute that's really about giving focused attention. So the quality of conversation. How many times have we been talking to someone and they're multitasking and that person really feels like, oh gosh, this person isn't paying attention to me, or they're not really listening, or they don't have the time, or they don't care. Focused attention is really about the quality of the conversation. And not only is it the one-to-one potential, dropping everything and really connecting, but it's really what's behind it is the desire to understand. And so much of quality time is also around shared experiences. So connecting or participating in a group really allows everyone to come together. And great ways to implement quality time is to make sure that you have good eye contact. That is something that really gets people feeling connected. Listening for thoughts and feelings when they're speaking so you can affirm those and make sure they know that they're heard and that you understand those. Really observing their behaviors, kind of watching the words that they're saying, and just letting them know that you understand where they're coming from. What's a tricky one is to resist the impulse to interrupt, because really if someone's primary is quality time, they really just want you to be there and know that they have your undivided attention, you're listening, that you understand, that it's not about you, it's really about their time. And so one way to connect with doing quality times is not only to do one-on-ones, and we'll talk a little about some suggestions at the end on how to implement these types of things, but also to do team outings. And there's just a way that brings a connection when people feel like, wow, we're spending time together, that's really important. And having that, you'll see that the energy will just shift. When someone has quality time and they feel like they get that quality time, it's really important. Dan, I think this is a challenging one for practitioners because I know practitioners are always so busy and they're with patients all day long, and so I know it's not probably easy to give quality time. Have you been successful with this in the past?
Yeah, I think there's different ways you can deal with this one because there's something we were talking about in one of the office meetings that I had recently, is that it's difficult if you think about the dynamics, right? You have your staff that's running a business, and then you have you, the doctor, that's interacting with patients who are sick. But then I think what I'm trying to work on now is kind of a little bit of overlap, so a little bit of cross training, so that my staff is aware of a lot of the patient communication, quality time issues, all this kind of thing, so that they can interact with my patients as not just I'm going to schedule you an appointment and collect the money, but also as part of the overall healing process so that we're all offering quality time, And my new office manager, Samantha, is pretty incredible at this, and she's better than anyone I've had at this before. And I'll listen to her on the phone when patients don't know I'm around. I'm just listening to her end of the conversation, and I'll watch her diffuse a patient who's upset or give some basic instructions to a patient who's getting sick from a supplement, and just basically kind of calm people down. And that's why my email from patients has been cut by 75-80% because Samantha is at the front desk there just fielding these people. And it's amazing how much of the interaction and how much of the tugging at our sleeves that we get from patients is coming just because they're a little freaked out. And if Samantha can deliver 3 minutes of quality time on the phone to that person and kind of hear them and respond to them, whoosh, that's so great for me because it frees up my time to not get pulled into those kind of situations. So I'm really noticing this now with our new office setup. I don't think I've had this as well ever in the past as I have this year. It's made a big difference for de-stressing me.
That's great. It's great to see that connection happening all the way around. It's like coming full circle when you're getting the benefit of the relationship with your employees and the benefit to your patients.
Hmm.
The next one is acts of service. Acts of service is when others reach out to help. And this looks like when you know your patient load's busy, and wouldn't it be great if this was a language, you're like, gosh, it'd be great if someone could help me do something. So think about your employees when they're totally buried and assisting them in times of need. And what they're really looking for is they're looking for the spirit of being willing to sacrifice on a part to those who help them. So they're sometimes just asking someone if they need help, even if they decline it, just lets them know, I'm there for you. I understand, I support you. And if they say, yeah, I could really use some help, it's doing a few things that are really important to people that have this as their primary appreciation language is asking before assuming or diving in. So what often happens is if you can see that, maybe one of your staff members is behind in some activity and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this for them. And you think, oh, I'm helping you out. But actually, that's not the thing that they needed help on. They needed help on something. So discovering what specific service would be most meaningful to them and doing it with a supportive attitude. So we all know that's like when it's just like someone, you're stressed and someone's like, oh my gosh, do you need some help? Looking at you like you can't do it or you're incompetent or whatever all those things are. And you're like, okay, yeah, but I don't want it from you because you're not making me feel very good about it. So knowing that it's really about the attitude of genuinely just caring about, hey, it looks like you're buried, and is there something I can do to help you? And then again, they'll say yes or no, but just that offer is really important. And knowing that if they do ask for help, that you complete what you start. This is a big one because a lot of times people offer to help and then they don't complete it, and then they make more of a mess of it than it was when it started, and then that person's twice as frustrated. So knowing that if you have somebody that has an active service appreciation language, knowing that whatever that is, make sure you complete it because then that'll really come full circle for them in that act. The last one is tangible gifts. And tangible gifts is about receiving recognition through an object or a gift. Now, this does not have to be expensive, and it's really all about the thought that counts. And so what's that experience of personal value to them? So really appreciating the thought that goes behind it. I know that people that are really so thoughtful about the gifts that they give to people, or when they're trying to find just the right thing, they put, they've gone to 10 stores or they've created some beautiful story behind the experience they want to give someone. That it's a priority for them. Other people, gifts are not a big deal. And they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take a gift. I want to take a gift. It's not a big deal for them. But those that it's really important for, it motivates them like crazy. So implementing this is really about understanding the employees' motivations and their likes. It's not just about money. It's about time. So one thing that I used to do when I had a really large organization of a couple hundred people when I worked in corporate was, it was expensive to obviously have the budget to be able to give gifts. But what I used to do is I said if we hit certain goals every quarter, everyone could have a free day off. And to me, that doesn't cost me any money. It doesn't come out of my budget. A free day off in corporate's not a big deal. But man, you should have seen the way people were motivated for a 3-day weekend. So knowing that there's different things that you can do, whether it's time or just bringing people together. I mean, food is a nurturing object, and people love to get like lunch and snacks or coffee, doing different things where you can, just acknowledge through a little bit of a gift that there's a connection there can be really, really powerful. Dan, have you had luck with gifts in the past?
Well, that's a mixed question, isn't it? You know what I always do? This has been my strategy previous to getting involved with the right kind of business people like Leandra. My strategy was massively overpaying people, leaving them all on their own to do their job all done by themselves without any recognition, feedback, or any kind of structure, and just hoping that the whole thing worked out. And figuring that I could just kind of pay my way out of management. in gifts, I'm like ridiculously overly generous about gifts and salary too much and bonuses too much and all this kind of stuff. And what's really interesting is that I kind of learned firsthand that you can escalate what you're paying people and what you're trying to give away. And I guess if the person's appreciation language is gifts, maybe that'll make a benefit to you. But ultimately, people just if they're being ignored, but you're giving them a lot of gifts, it doesn't really connect in the long term, and the employees that I used that strategy with over the years ended up losing motivation, not working very hard, starting to complain a lot. And to me, I didn't understand it because I was like, wow, you're getting overpaid. Why wouldn't you be happy about your job, And in fact, it goes back to what Leandra was saying earlier, which is that people are not primarily motivated by money in the workplace as the most important or sole thing. And you can't really buy your way out of poor management skills. You really can't. And so I think now we have a really wonderful structure in the office where people are paid, I think, a very fair wage, and we have a bonus structure. So if we do well in the business, then they can benefit as well. But it's not this default. We all have to earn it. If we're going to make a lot more money next year, I'm going to work a lot harder, obviously, because I'm doing all the patient services, and the staff's going to need to work a lot harder too. And we can do that as a team together. And that's a lot different for them to get this extra payment at the end of the year because we all came together and worked as a team than for me to just try to write a check, ignore them, and hope that the whole thing works out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're totally right. You've nailed that. Let's talk about how you can do this and it misses the mark. So as Dan was saying, it's almost, not understanding what people's appreciation language is and giving the one that you think makes most sense, but they actually doesn't connect with them. Don't go through the motions because it will backfire and you won't get the results that you want and people still aren't happy. Dan could have continued to keep paying people really over generous rate and they weren't going to work any harder. So you're definitely not building any employee goodwill or having your business be successful just because you're really focused on one specific thing that you think is going to motivate them the most. And noting that not one size fits all. And before I had read this book, and I was working my way up in management about 10 years ago, I think mostly out of desperation, I just started doing all of these things because I realized that for some people, wow, what's really important to them are those little, extras. And for other people, what's really important to them is that verbal recognition or the written recognition. And for some people, what's really important to them are those team building activities. And so I just started sprinkling in all of those things all across the board. And that's when I really saw, wow, everyone feels really connected. And I was recognized and rewarded in my department for having those high positive marks because everyone felt that they were getting their needs met. And again, it's not like I was focused on every single individual person specifically going, how do I meet Jack's needs and Jane's needs and Mary's needs? I was just like, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of everything, and it just worked. So knowing that you have to be able to not just rely on one method. The third thing where people miss the mark in management is that it's just not a priority. It's just not important. But know that it is to them. I'm going to repeat that. It is a priority and it's important to them, even if it's not for you. So the way that you can approach this is not through that, oh gosh, I feel obligated to do all this stuff, because they feel that too and they know that it's really not genuine. So making sure that your attitude is really connect with, again, the desire for them to be happy. And I'm a big believer in understanding, again, what people's motivations are, but also understanding your own personality traits and what motivates you, and knowing that, my personality style, as I'm a big believer in using Myers-Briggs as a tool, I'm a thinker versus a feeler. And so I'm not saying, oh, I really just want everyone to be so happy here because that's what warms my heart. I want everyone to be happy here because I want them to be productive and I want the business to be successful, and I know when people are happy, they are more productive. So you can look at it from the I just want people to be happy aspect, or you can look at it from I want my business to be successful, but either way, the sincerity of connecting those dots of what resonates for you and how you connect with them is important. And the last one to say is that understand that people have a primary and a secondary, and it can shift based depending on the situation. So this is very, very interesting because you would think when you meet somebody that has a likeness, especially of your own, especially if it's like words of affirmation, and I'm a giver of words of affirmation. So I'm constantly telling people they're doing a great job, and I'm recognizing their traits, and I'm doing all these one-on-ones. And one of my employees has that same thing. Well, interesting enough, when they see that that's constant and they're always getting that, they will go to their secondary language that they're not getting enough of. So that's why I try my little sprinkle a little bit of magic across everything, because if that secondary language becomes more important because the first one's being met and you don't address that one, then again, they can feel like they're not necessarily getting what they need. Dan, next slide.
Boy, people are a pain in the butt, aren't they? Just kidding.
So the business benefits, as I mentioned, if for you, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much work. This is what Dan feels like. This is so much work. What's in it for me? Well, I can tell you, you will get reductions in employee turnover. You will get improved attendance and productivity. You will get greater customer satisfaction from your patients and your clients because they're going to have a greater experience when your employees are happy and engaged. There's going to be a more positive relationship between coworkers, and as you all know, there can be a lot of drama in small offices with close quarters and tight personalities, and when people are in a better place, they're interacting better with each other, and it just creates an overall corporate or work culture that's really positive, and to me, that's where everyone benefits. And so, as I mentioned, some ways that you can take advantage of this is, one, make sure you're giving regular feedback to your employees. Do that through one-on-one meetings. You can do that through team meetings. We do monthly lunches here. I like to bring in weekly treats. We all try and be gluten-free in the office, so everyone's like on the hunt for the new, cool, yummy gluten-free item, and so we all love to like outdo each other on the latest find. And then, as Dan mentioned, we do annual gifts and bonuses. So if we are successful as an organization financially, we're going to share that, but we're not going to share it in advance of that work not being done or that those rewards being reaped at the end. So think about some of these things and how you can pull those into your businesses. Next slide. Oh, this is a good one. So once you're thinking about some of these things, then you're really looking at, okay, how do I make some of the mistakes that have got me here, or how do I avoid some of the ones that are coming? Dan, I'll be curious to see which one resonates with you if you've had any of these in the past, but one is potentially hiring nice people with the wrong skill set. Two, not being clear about the job role and requirements. Three, keeping employees on board even if you know they're not the right fit. That's a tough one. Four is poor delegation and accountability. And then five is lack of feedback and recognition. Have you ever stumbled across any of these mistakes, Dan?
Yeah, when I was really lucky. So my first few years in practice, I had someone else managing a clinic, and I was like the associate. But when I started my own clinic, I hired my first two staff members. And then it finally came down to this point where I had to fire this one person. And she was really deteriorating. And one day she picked up the phone and she didn't know where she was. Like she was like, hello, and she didn't realize that she was at work. She was having some mental health problems, And her coworker had been covering for her for like a year, and I didn't have the guts to fire her. It turned out, she was a single mom. She was the sole supporter of like this 3-year-old kid, and her kid was like the cutest little kid in the world, and we're kind of like a family. And her name was Stevie, and finally, when she picked up the phone and didn't know where she was, we just had to fire her. There's nothing else that could happen because it was just to the point where no one could cover for her anymore. No matter how much we were all trying to kind of enable her. And it was a horrible day. I had to bring her in and tell her that she was being let go and all this kind of stuff. And what ended up, and I think this is almost universally true, which is that when you're in a situation, it doesn't have to be as dramatic as it was with Stevie, but when you're in a situation where things aren't working out with an employee, and I think Leandra would agree with this because I know I've heard her say this, is that it's not working out for them either. And they're not in the right place. You're not in the right, you're not happy. They're not happy. There's always a mutual disconnection when you really need to terminate someone. And what ended up happening with Stevie was she lost her job. She went on unemployment. She moved in with her parents, and she wasn't on the street. She didn't become a drug addict. Nothing horrible really happened, And that to me was a lesson in, as soon as things aren't working, it's better for everybody involved, including the employee, to just cut your ties and terminate them in an appropriate way. And the other thing that I see, and I see this pattern really frequently with doctors, is that we hire someone who seems kind of cool and kind of interesting. And oh, well, that person's interested in natural health. That's kind of a great fit for our office. Or, oh, well, that person's in acupuncture school and they want to be a healer. So they would be a really good front desk receptionist person, and that has backfired on me a lot of times. I found that there's almost like a negative correlation between the level of interest in natural health and how great an employee they make. And so if you want a great receptionist, if you want a great office manager, you should just get a great receptionist or a great office manager, whether they're interested in what you do or natural health, whether they drink Diet Coke all day or not. It really doesn't matter. I think it's more finding that right person that's going to match the job based on these characteristics, like the Myers-Briggs tests and whatnot that Leandra runs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much about finding a fit. I mean, I could give a whole hour on how to hire people and a whole hour on how to fire people because in my lengthy corporate career, I've done many, many of both sides. But it's really, I'm really clear with people that I just want to find the right fit, and so much of it's understanding their strengths and with the job requirements. And so let's talk a little about that. Dan, you want to go to the next slide? So knowing how and when to hire. That's a big question that we ask. I haven't hired anyone yet. I don't know when I should think about hiring. Well, the first thing you should do is review your weekly tasks and calculate how much administrative time you're spending on non-billable activities. So every hour that you spend, whether you bill for it or not, is something that you need to quantify in terms of dollars. And then analyze what you can delegate to either a third-party resource, like maybe hiring a bookkeeper or looking for some outside third-party support, or hiring staff. And you can hire part-time staff for 10 to 20 hours a week, a great college student that can come in and just help do some filing or bookkeeping or whatever it is that you need to have done in terms of systems or process. And just think about if you're a $200 on average resource, the things that you're doing at 10 hours a week, that's $2,000. Now, if you could hire somebody at 10 hours a week at $15 or $20 an hour, you can see that that's a couple $100. And that could maybe free up time either for you to have better work-life balance or for you to be able to see more patients. And so really, this is the one area that I think many practitioners are challenged with, are understanding their value and their worth, and then making sure that they're appropriating their time and resources in the right places.
Yeah, and I'm going to chime in on this one because I'm really good at this one. And I'm horrible at a lot of these others. So I have, I don't open mail. I don't check any of the emails. Everything's screened before it gets to me. I don't see anything, touch anything, or do anything until at least one of my staff has looked at it, processed it, handled it, and decided that the only person on the entire planet that could deal with this particular situation is me. So I am screened. I'm like that football player, what do they call it? The quarterback, right? I'm like the quarterback, and I got this big offensive front end of 5 people that are just protecting me from the patients on the other side of the field, And so I can just waltz around. I can ride my bike down into the office, show up, be kind of cute and funny, and just waltz right out. And the last time in my office about a month ago, I tried to pick up the phone. I thought, oh, the phone's ringing. I picked it up, and I didn't even know. The patient asked some question. I don't even know barely how to turn the computers on, right? I'm completely removed from this. And this is a wonderful and great thing because I have a great staff. They know their jobs really well. And it's freed me up to do what I like to do, which is to run the training programs and do these other things, because I still have a pretty very busy clinic and practice that I run, but I'm only able to do that because I've been able to delegate so successfully. And the other thing that we do internally, which has been pretty important, is that even within the office, we have systems that are pretty robust. Like we have online scheduling, and we have really great accounting software, and we have really great bookkeepers, and we have systems to everything, so that even for the staff, as they're fielding all the things that are coming out them, they have a lot of resources on their own, so that they don't feel overwhelmed. And that's I think we have a pretty happy team. I think everyone that's working together in my office now is really glad they're there, and including myself. And that's not an easy thing to achieve necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're looking to hire, make sure you're identifying the roles and responsibilities, and that's really important, so you're setting the expectation and you're going to be able to hold that person accountable. And especially when you're hiring somebody, understanding what characteristics do those tasks require. This is one of the big potholes I see a lot of practitioners step into, is they hire in their likeness. meaning they're a big picture thinker, and oh my gosh, I just met someone and they're a big picture thinker too, and we had so much in common, and we thought the same way, and what a connection. And then they realize that actually that person, even though they're a great person and they can come up with a lot of ideas just like me, I actually need someone to do the details. I need to do the work. So I'm always looking to say, what's the job requirements? And then I interview for the skill set of the strengths that they have those job requirements. And I'm trying to find many times the opposite, which doesn't feel comfortable when you're hiring. Because when you're hiring, you're doing a lot of intuitive connection building. You're not going, oh, this person doesn't necessarily feel like me. And that's exactly sometimes what you want. So understanding the role, the responsibilities, understanding characteristics of the tasks, and then also looking at the level of experience and the salary, understanding what type of training you're going to provide, maybe what their experience is in the past, and doing a little analysis on the current rate of pay for this type of job so you can make sure you're competitive, you're not underpaying and you're not overpaying, but you're paying just the right amount for the job requirements, the skill set, and the experience. Next slide. So that kind of brings us to wrapping this portion up, but really look where we are. We've kind of gone from that leadership role to the management side. And the management is really, you are the one that is responsible for, doing the productive side of all the detailed logistics of that organizational structure and the systems and the processes and the great mission that you came up with. Oh my gosh, you have to deliver on it, and making sure that you're organizing teams and you're setting timelines and you're maintaining the quality, that you're developing talent, you're managing projects, a lot of things that were effective, and make sure they're doing effectively and efficiently, and knowing what your strengths are. So as you said, Dan, in the beginning, you know what you're good at and you know the things that you're not good at. And so either hiring someone to manage those things for you or knowing that you have to develop those in a conscious priority is just something that you want to make sure that you're focusing on moving forward. Dan, next slide. So some final thoughts is, I know, Dan, you're not the only one that says, oh, the staff. We were recently in San Diego at the Ignite conference, and one of the things I like to do is, kind of a post-it note exercise that, like, what's hot and what's not. Basically, I ask practitioners to list 3 things on 3 different post-it notes of all the things they love about their practice, and all through 3 things on 3 other post-it notes are all the things that they don't like. And Dan, do you know what the #1 thing is?
No, I wasn't there. What happened?
Staff.
Is that right?
They don't like managing staff.
Wow, I didn't know that. Oh, that makes me feel so much better.
That was one of the big ones. So you're not alone, because a lot of people just aren't taught how to manage people, and it feels like it's hard. But what I think is a really great opportunity is think about management as mentorship. And you really have the opportunity to influence somebody and be a really positive person in the stage of their life. And so when I realized that, it wasn't just, I was more there to serve them and help their personal development and, of course, get the objectives done as well, changing your perspective of feeling like, oh, that staff is just, they're complaining and they're hard to manage. And, a lot of it falls within ourselves to say, well, have I set clear expectations? Am I holding them accountable? Am I providing them feedback? And sometimes those are all the things that can be challenging within ourselves to set those boundaries up. But thinking a bit more about, like, how can I influence them and be a mentor in their lives at this stage? You can really make a huge difference. Maybe all of you can think about different people that have mentored you or been a leader for you that really influenced you. And then also making sure that you're encouraging your employees to develop and grow their passion and skill set. This time with you that they're going to spend is one step in their life. No matter where it is, I tell every single person before I hire them, I know you're not going to be here forever, and that's okay. So knowing that they're there for a purpose, a reason, or a season, and knowing that you really want to encourage your employees to develop and grow their passion and skill set. So one of the things that I do with every employee that works for me is I encourage them to pick a topic or a subject or an area of expertise that they want to develop while they're working with me, whether that's sales or marketing or customer service or operations. I say, look, the more that you can develop your skills in this area, you will be an expert. And when you are an expert, you are paid more. And so I know you're going to be with us for the time that you're meant to be here, but I'm hoping that when we part, you're going to leave with more experience and expertise, and that next job is going to be one step up for you. So set up goals for them where they can be passionate. And I say, okay, whatever that project is, now apply that to the business and let's see how we can grow it here. And then you can take that with you. So finally, remember that you can't grow and scale your business without a good support system. And at the heart of that is your staff. So your staff is gold, and I hope we've given you some nuggets today that will enable you to feel confident and comfortable about managing your staff and know that you have the ability to make a huge influence in their lives and in your business. So Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about the mentorship, how they can get more of this great stuff?
Yeah, we've got so much different things happening now that I just want to talk about this in detail. So we're launching a new version of the class in January, and it's as a matter of fact, this slide is out of date already. It's wrong. Sorry about that. It's going to be we decided the other day we're going to a 1-year model. Okay, so the class I've been teaching it as a 6-month class for a long time. Boop, make that go away. It's going to be a 1-year class now, and we're going to include all the business management training as part of that 1-year course. Okay, so for those of you that aren't familiar with the structure, we do a weekly live call, small group, 10, 15 doctors going over all the cases that you've had. So we're looking at cases and cases and cases. We average, the typical doctor that goes through our training program probably sees about 5 or 6 years worth of cases just in the classes themselves, as well as their own cases. We have the in-depth coaching that I offer. I teach all the classes myself. And so you get a pretty intense environment, and we have these classes are like riveting. We have a group of 10 or 15 doctors going through labs. Those of you on the call that have taken the course, you know what I mean. It's fascinating, riveting, and fun, and interesting, and exciting. It's not it's like boring online kind of thing, because this is like action. These are real patients with real problems, and we're solving them in real time. Okay, we have now in the protocols, we have about 2,000 searchable case studies that have all been transcribed and are all on video. We have dozens and dozens of clinical topics and discussions that we've recorded and posted in the community. And we have the most robust and amazing IT that you can imagine. And that's kind of said a nerdy computer guy thing, because I'm a nerdy computer guy. But what it leads to is a more effective learning experience. So when you sign up for the class, you get access to all the training modules, and there's going to be 9 of them in the new group. You've got basically a year's worth of materials to go through that teach you the basic work through a lecture format. But what's even more exciting than the lectures for most of the students is that we have an online community now as well that we built about a year and a half ago. And so the online community, you can think of it like an internal Facebook where you can see your classwork, you can see the other students, you can post your own personal blog. I look at your assignments and respond to them. It's a very interactive community. We have psychiatrists, neurologists, OBGYNs, we have chiropractors, we have physical therapists, pharmacists. It's a lot of acupuncturists and naturopaths. It's a really broad spectrum of practitioners. So when you post a question in the community, you're going to get a response from 3 or 4 different types of professionals to really not just make it about me teaching you this work, but that we're learning from each other now as a community as well. And I think there's an equally powerful connection that you have with me as the mentor, because I'm talking to you every week live. I'm going through all your cases. I'm looking at your homework every day. I'm the one that's in your world and helping train you, and you have access to all your classmates. So it's a phenomenal experience. And if you talk to anyone, or you're interested in the course, you can talk to one of the students that's taken the class. It's really quite amazing. And people, when I go to seminars, and I went to probably a half a dozen seminars this year just for my own educational purposes, and I show up, there'll be 5 or 6 students there. It's hard to even convey this. This is a sense of camaraderie and joy, really, in the community that we're building. And it's healers, it's the for real healers that we attract, the ones that are on this planet to do good things and to help people. Even though we talk a lot about business and we're trying to support you all in a business context, we're really on this in a different way. Okay, we're really on this to facilitate a deeper level of spiritual connection and healing for all the practitioners that come through the class. And we're doing that by getting you guys freed up financially, in addition to giving you the basic clinical skill. Okay, so we also now, thanks to Leandra, have a completely new practice management course that's within the class. If you've already taken my class, you can sign up for this as a separate course Would love for you to do that. Leandra hosts a weekly call where you can submit your business plan and your questions about how to grow your practice. You go through her curriculum that she's designed for practice building, and then you get to interact with the group and also with the her as your actual teacher. It is very hard to find someone with a very high level of management history and executive position like Leandra has that we can interact with one-on-one. It's a pretty unique opportunity for you guys. So she's going to be available to us for all of this coming year, and anyone who signs up for the course the next year will get direct access to her as well. And the topics that she's going to cover in the business module. And again, this runs side by side with the clinical training that I do. We're doing both of these together for people this year. Business strategy, operations, patient communication, that's actually my stuff, sales and marketing, and then how to implement all this. And we're seeing really consistent results in everyone that we're working with. People are starting to make more money, basically. And because they're making more money, as I mentioned, Duncan, earlier, all the other students that we train, they're able to have more time for themselves. I have never seen a doctor come through our training program who starts to make more money who goes out and buys a Porsche. We're just not attracting that kind of person. We're getting the real healers who want to have a work-life balance. And what we see with all the successful doctors is that they're working too hard and they don't have enough time for themselves or their families. And so by getting your business to work really well, you can create a space for yourself so that you can be happier and healthier. Next class starts in January. It's the first release of the whole new training program materials, okay? And I've been working on this for about a year and a half. I'm pretty excited to be releasing the new materials for everybody. And we have a whole integrated year-long program, whereas in the past I taught these as two separate courses. So we cover everything from the philosophy of functional medicine, adrenals, GI, thyroid, food, female hormones. There's an in-depth 3 or 4 month section on organic acids, detox, the brain, energy metabolism. It's a pretty amazing connection that we're trying to make throughout all these different body systems throughout the year. Okay, and we have tons of tools for you to use, all kinds of community resources. The enrollment fee for the coming year for the year-long class is $12,000. That includes, for free, the practice management course. We just decided to do that a few weeks ago. I'm like, just toss that thing in. We were going to sell it for separately. It has a $5,000 value, but we're going to, for this year, make it available to the people who sign up for the year-long class. And I don't think we're going to do that again, but we're definitely going to do that for all of 2016. That's kind of our plan. And I don't know what else to say. Just sign up. If you want to do the class, take it. It's a really great experience for everybody that does it. We don't get people, but we want the right people to sign up also. You get $500 off if you've listened to one of these lectures. So if you do sign up, make sure you mention that to our sales team, okay? You want more information, check out thekalishinstitute.com. If you want to talk to a practitioner consultant to see if it's the right program for you, Leslie handles all that. Leslie is an amazing healer and herself, and she's really good at talking to people, helping you sort through your issues, and helping you figure out, is this the right fit for you or not? We don't want people signing up unless this is the absolute perfect time and perfect class for you to get involved with, okay? And that's why our community is so robust and amazing, because when we get 15 doctors on the phone, they all are in the right place in their life to be taking our class, and they're all on the same path. And that's really the vibe that we're trying to create here. So I also talk to people as well. Once you talk with Leslie and you feel like maybe it's a good fit, I'd be happy to get on the phone and schedule some time to talk to you about the class. And we're really devoted here. I think all of us, Leslie, Leandra, myself, Larissa, Haley, Mark, our whole team, and Samantha is really, devoted our lives to creating a business model that you guys can start to implement. And when we see this affecting other people now by the tens of thousands, in terms of the patients that are impacted from the 1,000+ doctors that we've trained, it's a really great mission that we're on. And I invite you guys to come join us. And if you're interested, give us a call, talk to Leslie, see if it's a good fit for you, all right? And we'll be continuing the discussion in the new year. I want to thank you guys for your time, and look forward to connecting with you in January. We'll do another one of these free webinars at that time. Okay, take care, and bye for now.